Thanks for joining us. We have developing news tonight as police are still on scene of a deadly shooting in Toronto. One man is dead, and so far, no arrests have been made. Anam Khan is standing by with what we know so far. Anam, what's happening there now?
Right. So, Shannon, the plaza behind me is entirely taped off, and the forensic unit is still on scene. There's also some police cruisers around here, and an entire stretch of Ralph Street is blocked off. And, Shannon, I've been here throughout the evening. I've seen the community. They just seem devastated. A lot of people were crying, just desperately trying to confirm the identity of the victim. Just days after celebrating Eid, members of this community are grieving. Police say shots rang out at 5 p.m. Sunday outside this plaza at Lawrence Avenue West and Ralph Street, killing one man.
We heard pops, but we thought it was a car that always passes by, like backfires, and then we heard bang, bang, four shots.
Dozens of members from the Somali community have spent hours in the street, desperate for more information, as they fear the man killed is one of their own. Homicide detectives held a press conference late Sunday evening.
I'm hoping to expedite that process as quickly as possible. And I say that because there is a large presence of the community here, and I am well aware of that.
As detectives work to gather evidence and interview witnesses, it's still unclear if the shooting was targeted.
What I can tell you is there were multiple calls for sounds of gunshot. When the officers arrived, they located a male deceased.
While police say there's no threat to public safety, a community pastor says more needs to be done to stop gun violence in the city.
There's more mothers like this crying in our city. I beg the government, please do something about it. We need to stop it. Else we're going to be picking up more dead bodies on the streets all across the GTA.
2 months ago, 2 men were shot and killed in the same neighborhood. The pastor says things are only getting worse.
How do I know that? Because a family called me day and night. I have to deal with issues on the phone. Sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, I have to be dealing with issues on the phone. My team has to be dealing with issues where the government should be responsible for those issues.
Homicide detectives are so far not releasing any information about possible suspects, and they're asking witnesses to contact them.
Okay,
Shannon?
thanks, Anam. She's reporting live for us in Toronto tonight. A motorcyclist is dead after crashing with a car. It happened in Brampton just before 3 this afternoon.
A motorcyclist was traveling southbound on here Ontario Street, and a silver vehicle, the Honda that you see behind me, was turning left into the plaza here when it was struck by the motorcyclist.
Police say the man killed was in his 50s. It's not clear what led to the crash, but officers say they'll be looking into speed as a factor. It is being called an unprecedented attack by Iran on Israel, sparking swift and widespread condemnation. We'll have more on how local communities are reacting. But first, Margaret Evans begins our coverage from overseas.
The long shadow war between Iran and Israel making itself known in the night skies above the Middle East. An unprecedented Iranian attack ultimately thwarted by Israel's air defense systems and its allies. The Israeli military claims nearly 99% of Iran's missiles were intercepted. It released these images of what it says is an F-35 returning to a targeted airbase, presumably to show what damage there was has been minimal. The question remains whether escalation is inevitable. Iran described the attack as self-defense after a suspected Israeli strike on its consulate in Damascus on April 1st, killing top commanders. Some Iranians celebrated the attack on Israel in Tehran, but military officials have signaled they're hoping to now draw a line under it. There's no intention to continue this operation, says Iran's armed forces chief Mohammad Bagheri. But if the Zionist regime takes any action against the Islamic Republic of Iran, our next operation will be much bigger. Israel promised a response even before its war cabinet had met. Benny Gantz is one of its members. We will build a regional coalition and exact a price from Iran in the timing and fashion of our choice, he said. U.S. President Joe Biden urged restraint in a call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying Washington won't take part in any retaliatory attacks against Iran.
That is a clear line aimed at Netanyahu. And if he were to decide to take that sort of retaliatory action, he is risking what is evidently Israel's most important strategic asset, which is this relationship with the United States. I think it would be dangerous to do so.
It remains unclear how these developments will impact the war in Gaza, overshadowed by this latest crisis and the new sense of peril it brings with it. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
In light of the attack, police in Toronto and York region say they're stepping up patrols around places of worship, schools, and community centers. Clara Pasica has that part of the story.
Everybody has PTSD, right? I mean, it's just like every day something is happening, you don't know where or how, and it's terrifying.
I have 2 children who spent the night in a bomb shelter in Israel. They're in the south.
Dozens of people, many with close ties to Israel, gathered at Bathurst and Shepherd in Toronto this afternoon, home to many in the city's Jewish community, as a show of unity and demanding peace.
We hope that this will be the first and the last of its kind of attacks, because to have 300 rockets sent to a population of innocent civilians in the middle of their night is unacceptable. The world needs to stand up.
Iran's attack has many participants at rallies like this one calling for Canada to do more to show that it will give Israelis the support they say they need.
Israel's ambassador to Canada says the federal government must deem Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization.
This attack actually constitutes a wake-up call for the global scene, for the international community to understand that Iran's need to be faced strongly right now. First and foremost, the first initial step would be to designate the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. That needs to happen now. It has to happen today.
Iran had vowed revenge since an April 1st airstrike in Syria killed 2 Iranian generals inside an Iranian consular building. Iran accused Israel of being behind the attack, but Israel has not claimed responsibility. This Middle East international relations expert says Iran wanted to send a message, but likely could have predicted Israel's defense.
On the part of Iran, it was a big attack, but calibrated to really tell the Israelis, look, you cannot provoke me anymore. You cannot humiliate me anymore. That Iran is saying to Israel and the world, basically, Israel has been daring Iran to take risk, and Iran did deliver the message.
Here at home, York Regional Police and Toronto Police say there are no known threats, but in a statement said, in light of world events, TPS continues to deploy officers in dedicated patrols around places of worship, schools, and community centres. There is a command post at Bathurst near Glencairn, and officers are there to speak with residents anytime. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Cash-strapped Canadians likely hoping for some good news in Tuesday's federal budget. As JP Tasker shows us, the Liberals have already pledged millions in new spending, and that's got experts wondering how the government plans to pay for it all.
Ontario's red-hot housing market pushed this millennial to move.
Easily half the price of in Red Deer compared to Kitchener.
Cheaper homes in Alberta pulled the 26-year-old IT worker away from his hometown.
A lot of it is housing affordability and finding a decent place that's not in sort of, well, for lack of a better term, sketchier areas.
The Liberals are promising Tuesday's federal budget will be packed full of housing measures to appeal to younger voters.
We can dramatically scale the pace of home building in this country.
The government has already announced some $38 billion in new spending ahead of budget day, including $17 billion in home loans.
We need to reduce the cost of building. We need to make it easier to build homes, and we need to change the way that we build homes if we're going to meet this goal.
Figuring out how to pay for all this, that's the next challenge.
With the announcements we've heard recently, it leaves very little room to do that without increasing taxes.
As expenses go up, RBC says Canada's AAA credit rating is at risk.
They continue to commit to spending that is not sustainable, and so they have no choice but to raise revenues.
Especially as debt payments soar, now nearly double what Ottawa spends on the military.
Let's be honest, they have to raise taxes. I mean, how else are we going to do this?
Axe the tax! Axe the tax!
The Conservative leader says he won't stand for a tax increase.
We believe that a dollar in the hands of the person who earned it is always more powerful than in the hands of the politician who taxed it.
But the finance minister suggests it's only the wealthy who could be out of pocket.
We remain absolutely committed to being there for hardworking middle-class Canadians, and we won't raise taxes on them.
It's not clear how this government defines the middle class. Just who might have to pay more is expected to be revealed on Tuesday. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
If your travels take you along the Gardiner, you might want to budget more time for your commute. It's down to 2 lanes in both directions between Dufferin and Strawn. This marks the beginning of phase 2 out of 6 phases of a $300 million overhaul. Part of that massive plan replacing the bridge structure, repairs under the expressway, and adding a new traffic system. The closures are expected to last until at least mid-2027. Sophia joining us now with our first look at the forecast. A sunny Sunday, and it got warm later in the day, too.
Yeah, well, today, Shannon, turned out to be not such a bad day, but yes, in general, it was really a wet, warm, and kind of wild, windy weekend, wasn't it? Even today, we had peak wind gusts over 50 kilometers an hour. We talked a little bit in the show yesterday about all the outages into the southwest. Gusty conditions today is well with the storms that moved through around the breakfast hour. How many of you were woken up by the lightning and the heavy rain? We had some small hail as well in this cluster of storms, but things really cleared out quite nice in behind that. We reached 26 in Windsor today, 20 in Hamilton. Glorious sunny conditions for your Sunday earlier today around the region. Temperatures are anywhere from 3 to 8 degrees in parts of southern Ontario into your overnight hours, along with, yes, you guessed it, fog. A perfect recipe with that warmer air over the cooler lake waters. Be prepared for reduced visibility if you are driving anywhere into the overnight or even on your Monday morning commute, as that fog will be with us until the early afternoon hours with that daytime heating. Speaking of Monday afternoon, another glorious day on tap. The low 20s in parts of the southwest, and it's a rinse and repeat day for your Tuesday with plenty of sunshine and high teens. But I'll tell you about in the long range how things fall off the rails, and there's more rain in the form of a Colorado low. Shannon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sophia. Closing arguments are set to begin Tuesday in a high-profile murder trial that has captivated much of the province. Umar Zamir is accused of deliberately running over a Toronto police officer back in 2021. Now, court has heard the accountant and father had been out celebrating Canada Day with his pregnant wife and toddler. They were walking to their car in an underground parking lot when there was chaos, confusion, tragedy. The night ended with a plainclothes police officer, Jeffrey Northrup, struck and killed. Zamir has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder charges, and this past week he took the stand in his own defense. Joining me now is Lydia Riva. She is a criminal lawyer, and like many of us, she's been watching this trial closely. Lydia, thanks for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Shannon.
So let's start with that. We saw Zamir taking the stand in his own defense. What were your impressions?
The Crown has the burden of proving its case beyond a reasonable doubt. So Mr. Zamir does not have to testify, and the defense doesn't have to call any evidence. But he did want to testify in his own defense, and he gave very compelling, powerful evidence. He testified that he was very scared. He said that he was scared for his toddler and for his wife, and that he didn't know that these were police officers. He thought that they were criminals who were ambushing his car, and he said that his objective was to get out of there.
Yeah. Now, we know it is up to the Crown, as you said, to prove that Zamir had the intent to kill and knew Constable Northrup was a police officer. Do you think the Crown has done that here?
The Crown has to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's a very high burden of proof. It's closer to an absolute certainty than it is to a balance of probabilities. And in my opinion, this is a difficult case for the Crown. In order for the jury to convict Mr. Zamir, they would have to reject his evidence and find that it didn't leave a reasonable doubt. But he gave very impactful evidence. He was emotional at times. He said that he was very sorry about what happened to Detective Northrup. He even at one point said, "My heart bleeds when I think of the family of the officer." And he was also very emotional and crying when he talked about how scared he was. He said that if I thought they were police officers, I would have stopped. Why wouldn't I have stopped? I wasn't doing anything wrong. So he gave very compelling evidence. And I should say, though, it's not up to him to prove his innocence. There were even issues with the Crown's case. The Crown's own accident reconstructionist contradicted the Crown's main witnesses, the police officers. And there were also civilian witnesses who said they didn't know that these were police officers, and these were people who were in the parking garage. So in my opinion, Shannon, it's going to be a very difficult case for the Crown.
Yeah, we also saw that security footage from underground where, as you mentioned, those two other witnesses who were in their cars actually drove through the arm of the parking garage trying to get away. As you were saying, they didn't know that the officers were in fact officers either. Now, when we talk about closing arguments on Tuesday, can you take us through what we might see?
Yes, so because the defense called a case, they will go first. So they will give their closing address to the jury first, and then the Crown will give their closing arguments. And I expect the defense is going to argue that Mr. Zamir was just in the context of fear and chaos. This was a tragic accident, and this was not culpable homicide. I expect the Crown is going to say they have proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And based on their cross-examination of Mr. Zamir, they're probably going to argue that he had other options at the time and that he knew that Officer Northrop was indeed a police officer and that he knew that he had run him over. But this really is the Crown's last opportunity to try to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Zamir had the state of mind for murder.
We only have about a minute left, but I wanted to ask you, Zamir is facing first-degree murder, so he could be found guilty or not guilty. But is it also possible that the jury could find him, say, guilty of a lesser charge, second-degree manslaughter?
Second-degree murder is a lesser included offense for first-degree murder in this context. So if the jury finds that Mr. Zamir had the state of mind for murder, but that he did not know Officer Northrop was a police officer, he could be convicted of second-degree murder. The judge could also put manslaughter to the jury. But I should say that in order for the Crown to prove manslaughter, they would have to prove that Mr. Zamir committed an unlawful act beyond a reasonable doubt. And the defense position here is that this was an accident, and I'm sure the defense would be very disappointed with anything other than a full acquittal.
Well, we are all going to be watching on Tuesday. We know you will be too. Thank you so much, Lydia, for all your insight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Shannon. It was my pleasure.
Lydia Riva is a criminal lawyer in Toronto. We've got some breaking news this hour. The union representing striking contract faculty and teaching assistants at York University says it's just reached a tentative deal with the school. A ratification vote will take place this coming week. The union says picket lines are expected to continue until the vote results are in. Now, we've reached out to York for comment. We're still waiting to hear back.
Ambrose pulls it back. She waits her shot. Rebound in front. She scores! Danielle Sardagny has done it in overtime. Canada plays spoiler in Utica.
You saw it right there, the golden moment for Team Canada as they are once again at the top of the hockey world, beating Team USA in overtime at the Women's World Championships today with the win. Canada now has 13 gold medals compared to 10 for the U.S. Turning now to a story about some future women's hockey superstars. Girls Hockey Fest was back in Toronto. Top players in our country taught the sport to girls on the ice and in classroom sessions, all in an effort to make the sport more diverse, inclusive, and accessible.
I have heard about the event for many years, the Scotiabank Girls Hockey Fest, and I was honored to have the opportunity to be involved. So it's been a very special morning for me, and to see so many smiling faces, it's been amazing. We had a few different groups on the ice. I think they all did amazing. I think at different stages of their hockey experiences, from beginners that are just learning to play the sport of hockey to players that have more experience. They had so much energy, and I feel inspired because I know that these athletes will have so many fun choices ahead, that it's really been a special time for girls in sport and women in sport.
I was excited that I was going on the ice because it was my first time having a hockey lesson. I started playing hockey just last year when I turned 8, and yeah, I want to play in the PWHL when I grow up.
So to see them following along, to know about the athletes that are playing professional hockey or playing for Team Canada, it's amazing to see them just soaking up everything I think that we've taught them or spoken to them about today. So I think it's been a pretty magical morning.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, hockey!
Such a fun day for them, fun day for people outside today enjoying the beautiful weather. And Sophia's back to tell us what we can expect next.
Shannon, yes, we alluded to all the wet weather coming again this upcoming work week, but the good news for you still, Monday morning, pleasant conditions, sunshine and clearing fog. Want to give you a heads up about this. We've got this warmer air mass that'll be with us for the time being. Could lead to some reduced visibility along all the 400 series roadways for your Monday morning commute. It is the bearer of good things, though, this warm air mass. Look at Monday afternoon across the region. Still holding on to the low 20s in parts of the southwestern portion of the province. Glorious conditions, even a 15 rather in Thunder Bay. Plenty of sunshine, a rinse and repeat day for your Tuesday as well. How long will it last? Variable skies Monday and Tuesday, and then watch Tuesday night into Wednesday as this Colorado low creeps up. It's a slow moving band of rain, could lead to some locally heavy rainfall in parts of the southwestern portion of the province. It continues for Thursday, which is a slowly improving day. You miss out on a lot of the rainfall in parts of the nation's capital region. This could really add to what's been a month of hefty rainfall totals. You're looking at anywhere from 10 to 30 millimeters, especially around the Georgian and the Huron shores between Tuesday and Thursday. And some areas have already received upwards of 100 millimeters this month alone. So be on the lookout for watershed statements as the week progresses. But something else I wanted to talk to you about before I let you go. It's that time of year, mid-April. We talk about April showers, May flowers, talk about something else. The golden rule of thumb for being able to change your snow tires to your all seasons, so your summer tires, is when you've had 7 consecutive days above 7 degrees. And I think when we're hitting the 20s and close to for a few days in a row, it's about time we can do that. I'm knocking on wood, but I think we're out of winter's crosshairs now, Shannon.
We're all knocking now. Thanks, Sophia. That's it for us. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again next weekend. Have a great night.